Hi,
So,
Lynn. Hi,
hi,
Sabrina.
hi,
Uh,
everyone.
w- Welcome to Something is Up. Lynn, it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's an honor to have you here with me with Sabrina for this interview for the Italian slash international audience because we're speaking English, but we're also going to cover this um, for our Italian channels. So it's a pleasure having you here.
It's a
Sabrina,
pleasure to be with you.
thank you.
Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you again virtually, but it's a pleasure for me because we met many years ago in Philadelphia, and now at least we can say hello virtually. Okay, nice.
Very
So
nice.
I'll let Sabrina, if you don't mind, if you want to start. We are just going to say almost 30 years, 30 years next March from the incredible mass sighting that is one of the most important mass sightings of UFOs. Today we call them UAPs in recorded history. But you have a history with engaging with the phenomenon that goes even beyond the mass sighting of 1997, because you had your first sighting, if I'm not mistaken, in 1995. And you've been engaging with this phenomenon, trying to research it, trying to understand it, scientifically documenting it for 30 years now. So I'm very excited to look back at these 30 years and what you learned. But I'll leave Sabrina take it on.
Thank you, Antonio. First of all, Lynn, you are one of the most important eyewitnesses of the Phoenix Lights. So, can you explain what you saw that night on March 1997, and how was the sighting, this huge mass sighting?
There is much myth and disinformation concerning the mass sighting of March 13th, 1997. Now they call it a UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena. For me, it was just another night, and we can get into the prior sightings that I had. But on March 13th, for anyone that doesn't know, the mass sighting of anomalous aerial phenomena has become the most witnessed, most documented, most important mass anomalous sighting in modern history, if not all of history, which you addressed. But again, there is much dis and misinformation out there. On March 13th, while thousands of people were looking skyward for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also caught a glimpse of 1 to 8 miles wide, according to Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. He has accumulated hundreds of reports. And I thought he was kidding when he told me it was one of the objects was 8 miles wide, but he wasn't. And we're talking about orbs, these balls of light that seemed to be attached to something or had a force field holding them in equidistant arrays, whether it was V shape or triangle shape or boomerang shape, an actual craft. And anyone that's out there, please go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, www.thephoenixlights.net. And not only can you look at the photo page, which is a very unique collection of photographs that I have accumulated and have had analyzed and authenticated by military and university optical experts across the board. They are true unknowns. But if you go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, you will see that there is a 12-year study of hundreds of reports 2 or more people had to see the same craft to be in the study. And there were actually 10 different craft that were reported. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And ultimately, that is what the investigators concluded, because it wasn't just 1 or 2 events, as you would hear in the media. They picked up on the 8 to 10 p.m. time, because that's when most people were outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet, and most of the reports were coming in at that point. But the mass sighting actually began at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, daylight sightings of these phenomena. 5 o'clock hour, they were reported by Native Americans in New Mexico. The 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California. And the 10, 11 o'clock hour, there were 2 commercial airline pilots that reported that one of these massive craft was covering Las Vegas, Nevada, the whole city. It was covering the whole city. And the sightings continued until 5:30 a.m. the next morning, when a Boeing crew was coming into Sky Harbor International Airport, and one of these massive craft was hovering right over their tarmac. So we're talking, not only did the mass sighting last over a dozen hours, but I have been doing a study, a 4-year study, on the experiencers of the Phoenix Lights. And we are finding out not only that these phenomena are worldwide, and I'll get to the study later if you like, but we also discovered that there were more people that saw it on March 13th in Texas, in Utah, and in Colorado. So we're talking about quite a parade of these anomalous aerial phenomena that glided very, very slowly, about 30 miles an hour, right over people's heads, rooftop level. Some people said they could have thrown a rock at it or a tennis ball and hit it. It was that low, totally silent, totally silent. That's what was so eerie to many people, is that it was so massive and they couldn't see any kind of propulsion to it. It was just gliding along. Some people saw it take off at blink speed without even dispersing the air. And others, and you can see that on the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, on the Phoenix Lights Network website, one of the craft actually split in 2 and shot straight up. The technology was incredible. And there's so much more to this story. At 3 a.m., in the middle of everything that was happening, there was a call to the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter Davenport recorded it. Part of that recording is in our award-winning documentary, Phoenix Lights documentary, and you can hear it. I mean, very detailed, very professional, from an alleged crewman who called the National UFO Reporting Center at 3 a.m. to report that at 8:30 p.m. during the mass sighting, one of these massive, over mile-wide craft was hovering right over central Phoenix, and military jets were sent out from Luke Air Force Base, which was close to Phoenix, an Air Force base, to intercept and get gun camera film of this craft. As they got close, about a half mile away, the lights started to dim, and then the entire thing blinked out as they got closer and disappeared. And his crewman said not only did he help one of the pilots out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it when they got back to Luke Air Force Base, but they went on lockdown at Luke Air Force Base. So they knew what was going on. Also, there were civilians who not only saw jets taking off from Luke Air Force Base with afterburners on, but they also watched as the jets from the Air Force left the UAP craft reappeared and then continued very slowly across the airport and then beyond the airport. South Mountain Range is right south of the airport. It went over the mountain range and disappeared. So there was a lot going on March 13th, 1997. Not only the technology itself was just beyond anything anyone can imagine. And we've never seen anything that even comes close. And some people saw, by the way, these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. That'll come into play when I share our close sighting. But in the meantime, I can tell the rest of the story as it unfolded because there was no investigation. There was no explanation. After the mass sighting, the military and the government was just silent. It was uncanny. It was really bizarre since this went right over people's heads. And it wasn't until, do you want me to continue telling how the story
Yeah,
unfolded?
correct me
Because
if
it's really interesting.
yeah, just
Okay.
one question to add to
Sure.
this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even President Clinton, there was president at the
Well, I'll
time.
get to that. I'll get to that.
Great.
That's a good
Thank you.
question. Because I'll do that now because there were coincidences, and I don't believe in coincidence anymore. There were coincidences on March 13th, 1997. You brought up one. But the first one that I found out about personally was that a object out in space that's supposed to detect incoming missiles went dead that night. And it was built out in Chandler near Phoenix. And they told the Phoenix people here, the investigators, that this object that was supposed to detect incoming missiles went dead on March 13th. Then, months later, there was an article, a multi-page article in Scientific America, very scientific, about gamma rays, strange gamma rays that came into our atmosphere on March 13th, 1997. Now, they did not talk about the Phoenix lights, but they noted there were strange gamma rays on March 13th. Now, former President Bill Clinton was in Florida with a golfer, Greg Norman, and was rushed out from his home to an undisclosed location. And when asked about it, he said he fractured his knee or something, but we have no documentation, no pictures about that. And then the fourth thing that I was told, and this is just hearsay, is that, but from very reliable people, is that we went to DEFCON 3 on March 13th, 1997. So those were some of the coincidences that happened during the mass sighting. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And to explain to our audience, what does it mean that your military, the White House, went to DEFCON 3?
That means
Wh-
that as there's some danger happening somewhere in the United States, we have to raise up to different DEFCONs. And from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 would be the worst, right?
One means you're at
And
war, basically.
I'm sorry.
One basically means you're engaged in a war, right?
Or nuclear or whatever.
Nuclear.
And it's interesting, by the way, I'll just mention this. 30 years before the mass sighting, almost to the day, I think it was March 16th, in 1967, there were UFOs outside of our giant atomic silo in Montana, 2 of them separate, and everything went offline. You cannot turn off the atomic silos, but they were off. And, freaking everybody out for about 3 hours. And then suddenly everything went back online. So you have to think, what is that? What is the meaning of that? Because if these UFOs wanted to harm us, believe me, they could have. At that point, they could have done whatever they wanted to. They're much, much more advanced than we are. And people ask me all the time, are they here to harm? I can't speak for other things, but I can about the Phoenix Lights. There has not been one, and we'll get into it, how it affected the witness, because that's really my main focus now. There has not been one report of harm, threat, or abduction, or missing persons, as one movie did, associated with the Phoenix Lights anomalous phenomena. Again, I can't speak for other things, but I can for the Phoenix Lights. If anything, it was just the opposite. People were in awe and in wonder and curious. Many cars pulled over to watch. It was just incredible. And I am now writing another book, my first book, and we'll get into it. I pushed my whole medical career aside for 7 years after thousands of people saw what I had been seeing for 2 years prior to the mass sighting, to find a logical source and meaning for what I had witnessed and photographed. I have yet to find it. If anything, what I discovered, because I knew nothing about this topic. When my husband, who's also a healthy skeptic and a physician, had a close sighting to our home, which I'll get to in 95. But I knew nothing. And when thousands of people saw what I had been seeing and documenting on film, I am the only one that we know of that has 35 millimeter photographs of these UAP. They're in the negative. They cannot be denied or explained. So we can go back to that. And I do want to talk about, if we can, how the mass sighting really affected people at a very, very deep, profound, life-changing experience in real time and long term. But just to finish off the story, if I may, as the story unfolded, again, there was no explanation. There was nothing. No investigation as far as we knew for months. In May, okay, this is months later, there was a councilwoman, vice mayor of Phoenix, who got so many calls. She got over 1,000 calls from her constituents asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? And she innocently asked for an investigation at a council meeting and was shut down immediately. They never said a word. They never gave her any help, nothing. If anything, there was so much ridicule and snickering and discrediting going on at the time. They really tried to discredit her just because she asked for innocently. She didn't see it, but so many of her constituents did, and they were asking for an investigation. And so that was awful. I was so happy that I stayed anonymous doing my own homework, because there was so much ridicule at the time. And as the story unfolded, June 18th, and I'm just giving you the highlights. There's a lot more to this story. I had a 750-page journal 7 years later that I squeezed the best of what I found and the most credible into 230 pages and came forward in 2004. But to go back here, and I'm keeping a daily journal every single day of media reports and witness testimonies. And it's just mind-boggling. And the history of these phenomena, which we can get into if you like. But in the meantime, on June 18th, suddenly there is a front page article and a multi-page article inside of USA Today, which was the first time that anyone outside of Arizona was hearing about our mass sighting, because they really kept a lid on it, okay? And it went viral, which was very interesting because we did not have social media at the time. And the very next morning, it was big news all over all the national morning shows, I don't know if you ever heard of Dan Rather and Peter Jennings, but it was out there, and we were deluged by media from all over the world. And once they talked to the witnesses, their reports were so detailed and so heartfelt that they too were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? Suddenly, after nothing for months, the very next morning, after the USA Today article in June 18th, 1997, we get a public announcement that then Governor Fife Symington was calling an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. And everyone took him seriously. I mean, there was media there, there were parents that were there, and he comes marching out, one of his aides, in a giant alien head costume and made a mockery. And for those who saw it, particularly parents that were with children and saw something that was 2-3 malls wide, that he was making a joke out of it, they were really put off, I must say. They were not happy with that, but it did put a lid on it. I must admit. And the funniest thing is that he said that he didn't want anybody to panic. People were panicking. No. People were not panicking. As I said, there wasn't one report, not one credible report in almost 30 years now of harm, threat, or abduction. The military and the government were probably panicking because now it was out of the bag with a USA Today article, which was huge. Okay. That month after that press conference, because I was ticked off as well. I mean, I saw this up close and personal, and it was not a joke. Okay. In 95, we can go back to that. And I called every military base and tried to get the highest up that I could of military personnel. And they were more interested in meeting with me. I never told them details, but I did tell them that I took pictures and they wanted to meet with me. And I said, no, that's not happening. But I have one in the book. I have a couple of conversations, and one of the military people said, the only ones that know who did this are God and whoever did this. Now, this is a military person that said that. In the meantime, a month later, it was July 24th, I get a call from one of the heads of PR at the Air National Guard. And she says, oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled. I was looking for any logical explanation. And she says, do you believe that nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird? Now in Phoenix, we have people that come in because it's a beautiful resort town that we call snowbirds from all over. Okay. But when I looked it up in military terms, it means diversionary tactical maneuvers. Okay. So they may have been sending off flares to divert attention away from the true unknowns, but there's not one witness that has described what flares do. And I said to her, wait a minute. I said, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She says March 1st to the 15th. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We didn't get into this yet. I actually witnessed and photographed an over-mile wide formation of equidistant lights 2 months before the mass sighting, head on, turning into a V shape, according to one of the air traffic controllers who I talked with, who was also a weather person, who said, a meteorologist, who said that the entire thing turned against the wind and then elevated slowly and moved in synchrony behind South Mountain. It was 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. And I tell her that, and she says, well, you never told me that. because I didn't tell them detail. I said, besides, and I had educated myself to anything logical, including military illumination flares. I said, you're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation, they're actually dropped on a parachute from an aircraft, and they float haphazardly with the wind slowly down to the ground, and they illuminate the area around it. That's what they're used for, so that heat-seeking missiles will go there to the flare instead of to the aircraft, and they illuminate the ground around it. And not one person, not one that saw the true unknowns described that. But I said, you're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation for, if anything, for more than a few seconds to a few minutes, traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistantly spaced, mile-wide V for hours? And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, I'm still waiting for that call.
So, Lynne, basically,
Anyway, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions so far? Are we good?
What I was saying is, so here we are a situation where thousands of people see these lights. Some people describe a craft, others describe orbs moving information for hours and hours across multiple states. At the same time, you have space-based technology that is supposed to detect missiles that goes dark. You have gamma rays coming in. You have allegedly the president of the United States that gets taken out of his vacation golfing and goes into an unknown location. And allegedly your military system go to DEFCON 3, and the governor of Arizona put up a farce press conference to try and diverge attention, when years later then he admits that he actually saw.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
No, but the question is,
I only have two more things to tell you as the story unfolded, and then we can go back to 95 if you'd like, with the closed sighting.
But to finish it and to ask you a question, to finish it, this train of thought and ask you a question.
It'll take me 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So as the story unfolded, and again, there is so much more to the story. I'm just giving you the very tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more underneath. But right after the 10th anniversary, for some reason, former Governor Fife Symington, as you alluded to, decided to share and disclose. He was no longer governor, okay? But he disclosed that he actually witnessed one of these mile-wide craft, and as an awarded military pilot, not only was it not flares, it was a craft, and he used a word that other countries, I don't know if Italy they use this word, but I know in other countries, UK and Belgium use this word, in other countries, otherworldly. He said what he saw was otherworldly. That is very significant, because here we have the former elected official that mocked the sighting in 97, but finally came clean and actually shared that he had witnessed the mass sighting.
March 13th, 1997. This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking. And I'm not sure about the date. You've got a better memory
March
for the
13th.
dates than I do. Yeah.
But there was no, like the Clinton day, no.
No. No, I was on a strict diet. No, I'm serious. I'm serious now. That unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right. Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying. So it was pretty breathtaking. And I'll never forget, I snuck out to see it, without DPS, which I'm not supposed to be driving my own car and that kind of thing. And so, but I told Ann what I was doing. I was going to go up to Squaw Peak and see what everybody was, clamoring about. And when I walked in the front door, she looked at me, and I was apparently just, normally I'm fair complected and pale anyway, right? And she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "she looked like a ghost. What did you see?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what I saw, but it was really something, and I'm not going to talk about it." And
wow.
So
Did it frighten you?
No, I think I was kind of in awe, really,
How big?
Bigger than anything I've ever seen in the sky.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky?
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. And it was hard to define because of the light in terms of the size, but it was absolutely silent and had sort of eerie embedded lights, and so that's what I saw. And I wasn't expecting to see anything because I was looking out over at Luke to the west, and then all of a sudden these people in the park area just on the west side of 51, there were a bunch of people there. Everybody said, "Oh, look at that." And we turned around, and this thing was coming from the northwest, traveling to the southeast.
Now, I have one more thing to share, if we're there.
Sure.
Yes?
Of course.
Okay.
Sure.
Right after, also, in 2017, there was a front page New York Times article that divulged that the Pentagon was doing a $22 million behind-the-scenes study. It was funded by Harry Reid, he was a senator at the time, to investigate UFOs. And it was out of the bag. I mean, that article really showed that even though they denied for so many decades and even ridiculed, here behind the scenes, they were studying UFOs. And shortly after that, now I'm going to go back because in January of 97, after Eyewitness, and I can get into details if you want, that over mile wide phenomena over the airport, okay, turning against the wind. And all the air traffic controllers ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, Chinese lanterns, flares, even skydivers with lights. Then it was so unnerving having seen this and not having an explanation for a very close sighting that happened in 95, which I'll get to if you like. The next morning, and this is in January, 2 months before the mass sighting, I called around and I found the air traffic controllers, and they were very forthcoming originally. Okay. The morning after the mass sighting, I called them again because it looked like the same exact phenomena. And I actually captured the signature video, the only one out of a handful of videos that has been confirmed by military and university optical experts, as well as the air traffic controllers themselves, that it was hovering at 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace, the same exact thing that I had in 35 millimeter 2 months before I got video of during the mass sighting. So I called them up again and I said, it looked like the same thing over the same location, and they confirmed that it was, which blew me away, to be honest, that it was the same thing. Now that I'm finding out that thousands of people saw what I saw. But the very next morning, I mean, I had no idea that thousands of people had seen what I had seen. The very next morning after the mass sighting, I called the air traffic controllers up again, and they confirmed for me that it was the same thing, and that there were two pilots that called in, a commercial airline pilot that said, "What the heck are these lights over me?" So it was right over the tarmac. And a private pilot. They didn't say who that private pilot was. But in 2017, after this article, shortly after, this private pilot did come forward to tell his story, and it was none other than actor Kurt Russell, who actually, in hindsight, was reporting it on close approach in his Cessna little airplane, okay, was reporting it to air traffic controllers while I was filming it, which is pretty cool in and itself.
Yeah.
But that, that is such a cool story, because the more credible people that come forward, the more credibility is lent to the whole picture of the mass sighting.
An unidentified pilot, according to the press cuttings, flying near an airport in Arizona with his son when he spotted 6 lights in the night sky. So he called from the aeroplane to air traffic control to say, I'm seeing these lights here. I wasn't expecting any other planes. They're none supposed to be on my landing path. Can you tell me what's going on? They said there are no other planes. He said, I'm seeing 6 bright lights coming towards me. Mystery unresolved.
Except, tail number for that plane was Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, and I was the pilot. No way. Oliver and I.
Yes, take us back. Doesn't say that in the briefing.
Oliver and I.
Or I should have read to the end.
Oliver and I were flying in. I was flying him to go see his girlfriend, and we were on approach, and I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape, and Oliver said to me, I was just looking at him, and I was coming in. We're maybe a half a mile out, and Oliver said, "Pa, what are those lights?" And I then it kind of like came out of my reverie, and I said, "I don't know what they are." I said, he said, "Are we okay here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna call him," and I reported it. And they said, "We're not painting anything. We don't show anything." I said, "Well, okay, I'm going to declare it's unidentified, it's flying, and it's 6 objects." We landed. I taxied, dropped him off, took off, went back to L.A. Never said a word. He never said a word. I never thought of it. 2 years later, Goldie is watching a television show when I came home.
Yeah.
And the show is on UFOs. But as I came home, "Hey, honey, how's it going?" And I'm kind of hearing the TV going, and I stopped and I started watching, and it was on that event. Now, that was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that. And I'm watching this, and I'm feeling like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's like, why do I know this? You know what? And it's not clear to me. And finally, I said. Then they said a pilot reported it. A general aviation pilot reported it on landing. I'd never thought of it since then, and I said, "That was me. That was me." And I said, "Wait a minute. I'll go to my logbooks." So I went to my logbooks, and there was the flight at that time, and I didn't mention anything about the UFO. The fascinating part of that to me is that it just went literally out of my head. Yeah. And Oliver never mentioned it. And had I not seen that show, I'd have never thought of it again.
Amazing.
Now, that, to me, was the weird part.
Believe it now, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm convinced.
It's just unidentified. It's just unidentified. It's flying, and it's
an object.
It's an object.
Yeah.
And, I'd love to get into how it affected the witness in real time and long term, and the study that I just completed that we have peer review, and now there's an article that was published in the Society for Scientific Exploration just this past month. But do you want me to go back to my close sighting first? My introduction to the Phoenix Lights? Do you have any questions so far?
Sabrina.
Yes, I have one question, because some people say that Lockheed Martin and other aerospace companies have created high-tech prototypes with special performance, with invisibility, and so on. Do you think that it could be an explanation for the Phoenix Lights? I mean, maybe you saw super secret human aircraft or not?
First of all, we know now that even in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, the government and military were developing very advanced aircraft that people were seeing, and they confused the whole issue. When people said they were seeing UFOs, they said, oh, okay. I mean, they didn't let people know, of course, because they were secret, aircraft. But, it's a good timing now, Sabrina, because I always go back to our closed sighting, because that was my first introduction to the Phoenix Lights. Cannot be explained or denied because I have pictures, 35 millimeter photographs, up close and personal. And I'll tell you that story because I saw this. I am a witness, I am an experiencer, and I have the documentation to prove it. The eve of my birthday, and again, I don't believe in coincidence, but for some reason, it was the eve of my birthday, and I was leisurely. We live mountainside, and if you go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, the very first picture is the topography, so you can see part of what we see from our home. And it's important when you go to that first picture. I have a picture of a car coming down the road, and you can see that those lights reflect onto the road. Every light out there glares and reflects, okay, if you really look at them. The orbs that I'll be talking about do not reflect at all. They're very different from normal lights that we have, okay? And to the right of that car is a string of skylights that are in a house down the street, which is significant because if you look straight up from that stream of lights on the house, you'll see that there are two mountain ranges in the distance. One is South Mountain, just south of the airport, and a few miles back is the Estrella Mountain Range, okay? Now, I'm going to tell you a little story about this first, because this is an important connection. In between those two mountain ranges is the Gila, Gila, Gila Bend Indian Reservation. Very sacred ground, okay? Now, what's ironic is that anybody that cares to look at my bio on the Phoenix Lights Network website, I have extensive things on there that are pretty amazing in and of themselves, but I have dedicated my life's work since medical school in '76 to community education of vital health issues. I started as a reporter at NBC in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A syndication grew from that of 60 to 90-second pieces on how to prevent heart attack, what to do with a burn, etc., which were showing in Phoenix when we moved here in 1980 at CBS. And then NBC asked me to start a health program for them as a reporter in the early 80s. And by 85, I was seeing kids in that practice. Adolescent medicine is my specialty, and medical communications, that were drowning in substance abuse. I wanted to do something productive to wake them up to the reality of substance abuse and peer pressure, etc., and combined kids that had been there, experts in the field, and then I brought in my other hat. Before I went to medical school, I was in professional musical theater. I was on Broadway. I don't know if anybody out there knows some of the names that I toured with. If you ever watch I Dream of Jeannie with Barbara Eden, anyway, I understudied her in Sound of Music, etc. At any rate, I combined everything to get the attention of kids and had a curriculum along with it, okay? So when this fell in my lap, because what happened was that I was called to present a substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, okay? And just going back to the Phoenix Lights, when the Phoenix Lights fell in my lap, I knew nothing about the topic, and I felt obliged to do the same for this vital issue of UAP. But we can get into that in a second. But anyway, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation 6 months before the mass sighting. Okay. Now, they don't talk to outsiders, but I helped the principal. So after the mass sighting, I noticed, and in science, we look for repeatability. Most anomalies can be explained. Only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial or an FM frequency. But if you look at my pictures on the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, consistently, these UAP, these UFOs, unexplained aerial phenomena, keep popping up right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called up the principal and I said, did anybody happen to see strange lights on March 13th? And he started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. I had no idea that indigenous cultures worldwide not only believe that there are other intelligences out there and here, the Hopi tribe right here in Arizona have protocols to invite them in. They believe that these orbs are spirit world coming to give them guidance and knowledge and comfort and inspiration. And, you know, I have to admit, I have been inspired to do this. I would have never chosen this topic. But I said to him, I said, well, what about March 13th? Did anybody see lights? They were looking up at them on March 13th, and they've been looking up at them for centuries. He said that's how the Estrella mountain range got its name. Estrella means star in Spanish. Gateway to the stars. And they do believe there is a gateway or portal in that area where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. And again, in science, we look for repeatability. Look at the pictures. They speak for themselves. I always say, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. Just look at the data. It speaks for itself. Consistently, these phenomena, at least from our vantage point, keep popping up right where they say there is a portal or gateway. Anyway, on February 6th, 95, while I was leisurely taking a bath, because we're pretty high in the mountain there, and it's a private gated area. No one should have been there, okay? And it's very treacherous, you know, landscape. I don't know if anybody realized there's cactus and, you know, very treacherous snakes and all kinds of things, okay? And one wall of our bedroom is a window. And my husband was standing at the window talking to my mother-in-law, who had called to wish me a happy birthday from Philadelphia back east. We're in the Southwest. And he was on several state and hospital medical boards at the time. Nothing ever ruffled his feathers. But I was taking a leisurely bath in the other room. And he shouts out, Lynne, get over here quick. What the hell is that? Which was very unlike him. So I grabbed a towel, wringing wet, run to the window, dripping, and one wall of our bedroom is a window. So whatever pops up out there, we get to see, whether it's a fire or planes coming into Sky Harbor or whatever, a little below us, actually below us, because we're pretty high, about 50 to 75 feet off the desert floor, were 3 amber orbs in a pyramid formation. Now, again, I didn't know how long it was going to last. I wanted to run downstairs and get my video camera because it was so unusual. But did you want to ask me something?
No,
You
no,
were
no.
good? I didn't want to miss anything. So I tried to take everything in mentally, like a real mental moment. I can picture it in my mind right now. I call them an orb, and there were 3 separate objects, one on top and 2 closely aligned underneath. And they were oval shaped. And I call them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. And the fact that they were oval shaped, now I have a little question, because when the Tic Tac video came out, a Navy pilot caught pictures of this object over the ocean that went into the ocean, went out, went into the sky, called Tic Tac, and they're talking about oval-shaped objects. I don't know if they're connected at all, but they were definitely oval-shaped. I always said from day one, there was like an egg on its side, and the color within each orb was a uniform amber color throughout. Didn't glare at all. Very mesmerizing, very soothing. Every other light out there glared, whether they were car lights or street lights or house lights, every other light glared. These did not. And a thought popped in my head, if I don't get a picture of this, nobody's going to believe it. It was that unusual. So I collect sunsets, and anyone that's on Facebook, please go to my page, because every month I try to put our beautiful sunsets up there that we have in Arizona. And I had a cheap Instamatic camera in the closet to take pictures of the sunsets. And I said to my husband, I got to get a picture of this. Nobody's going to believe it. And I go running to the closet. As I grabbed the camera, he called me back. He says, get over here quick. One of them is disappearing. And as we both watched in awe, the top orb, without budging from the two underneath, started to shrink very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligent presence behind it. I always go back to this sighting because I saw that's right in front of me, and they were just a few hundred, like 100 feet, or I mean, they were really close to our house. And I'm watching this get smaller and smaller and smaller until it was pea size, and then disappeared. But it felt like it was still there. Where did it go? Okay. Another dimension, perhaps? At any rate, at that point, I just wanted to get a picture of it. So I jumped out on the balcony. I got a picture of the two lower orbs, and you can see that on the Phoenix Lights Network photo page, Phoenix Lights Network website photo page. The second picture there after the topography are the two orbs that I caught when I got out onto the balcony, and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. I mean, it just seemed like time had stopped. And I did not share this with a soul, by the way, until 2 years later after the mass sighting, because it sounds so, just out of this world. But as intently as I was watching these two lower orbs, it felt like something was watching me. It just did. And going through my mind, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. The next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink, just like the top one did, mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it. And I quickly shot a picture of that. That picture was the only one that turned out at the time. And it's there. That's the third picture on that page on the top. But for me, it was confirmation that we did see something unusual. I happened to catch one of these orbs half disappeared, and one's still there, but I didn't know who to show it to. I knew no one who was into the topic. And, I just wondered for 2 years what this advanced technology was, until 2 months before the mass sighting, when I noticed, lying in bed out of our big picture window, 3 giant orbs. This was January 22nd, 1997, that were hovering at a distance far west. And I'm noticing, first of all, they were huge, amber orbs, balls of light, in an equidistant line formation. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, even though they're in an equidistant line formation, very similar to 95, and that they were in a formation, they were amber color, and I watched them as they seemed to shrink one by one from right to left, and they were gone. Now, everyone comes from a different background, different upbringing, different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. My husband didn't want anything to do with it. He wouldn't talk about it. It was very strange to me because I was so excited and in awe that I caught a picture, even though I didn't know who to show it to. He didn't want to talk about it. And when I mentioned those, this is 2 years later, when I mentioned those distant orbs to him, he said, do I still have to go to work tomorrow? I mean, that was his comment. The next
Yeah.
night, he was at a medical board meeting. And I come upstairs and I notice that out of the sliding glass door that's perpendicular to the big window that I went out on the balcony, I see now near the airport are those 3 orbs in a line, in an equidistant line. So I figured enough. I go downstairs, I grab my video camera, I go out to the outside, and I get about 18 seconds worth. And the battery goes dead, and it was charged. So I go inside. It was about 8 o'clock. I hook it up to the electricity. I go outside. They're gone. About a half hour later, my husband comes back from his meeting, and he comes up to drive, and I go outside, and I said to him, you know, remember the 3 lights that in an equidistant line formation that I saw far west last night? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain as I'm pointing. And I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there's red blinking lights on top of the mountain to let aircraft know that there's a mountain there as they're coming into the airport. And as I'm pointing, they reappear in the same spot. And I said, whoa, I got to get a picture of this. And I have to say that, again, I don't believe in coincidence. In video, as impressive as the formations are, it doesn't do the lights justice. They're much smaller, they're white, they flicker. I get upstairs, go out on the balcony, I'm just ready to shoot the 3 with my 35 millimeter. Suddenly, 6 lights across appear, the span, over a mile wide. And if you look at the first picture in that series, it's wavy because I was shaking, not having an explanation for 95. And this massive equidistant line of lights shows up by the airport. It's like, oh, what is that? But I kept my wits about me, thank goodness, and I kept clicking away. The second picture there, to me, is a smoking gun because it shows 5 lights in a V, big one in the center with 2 on each side, and it seems like there's 2 underneath. Well, 2 months later, during the mass sighting, thousands of people would describe what they saw as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing lights. Now, this is 2 months before the mass sighting. The same exact thing I caught on 35 millimeter that they described 2 months later during the mass sighting. And I kept shooting away as the lights underneath were disappearing. It seemed that the top formation was turning into a V, from straight on into a V. And again, I did not sleep well that night, even though, I woke up the next morning. I figured there must be a logical explanation for this. And it was near the airport, and I started calling around. I finally found the air traffic controllers who were very forthcoming initially. They shared with me it did not show up on radar. They saw the 3 at 8 o'clock and got nervous because it was right over the tarmac. And then they disappeared. And then the 6 popped up. And then they got really nervous because it did not show up on radar. They took their high-powered binoculars to look. And in their own words, they described 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something. But they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to or had a force field in between the lights. And one of them, as I mentioned earlier, was a meteorologist. And he said the entire thing turned against the wind. Now that's really telling, okay? As a unit, he said, then elevated slowly and moved in synchrony, as he put it, behind South Mountain, which is just south of the airport. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And he said, beats me. I said, you're an air traffic controller. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. And at that point, he said they ruled out, there was a whole group of air traffic controllers, professional sky watchers, that ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, Chinese lanterns, flares, even skydivers with lights. And we kept in contact, and these lights continued to show up, and I continued to photograph them up until and including March 13th, 1997, during the mass sighting, which for me was just another night. I had no idea that thousands of people were outside looking up at the sky purposely. I did too, for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet when they got a glimpse too of these massive, massive either orbs that seemed to be attached to something. You would hear that over and over again, or if it went over them, they could it blocked out in between. It blocked out the stars, or actual craft. I mean, people describe, as I said, go to the GAC page. It's amazing. We don't know if there was, it was concluded that there was a parade. There was a parade of multiple UAP. People don't know that. They think it was just one craft that went through Arizona. No, no, no. That was just one of many. Okay.
Yep.
Lynne,
Lynne,
that went. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask you something? So,
oh, absolutely. I get very
first of all,
passionate. I apologize.
I know, I absolutely, and there are so many questions. I mean, I will stay here hours to asking you questions because we've just scratched the surface on your story, on your personal story, and on the
Can
recount
I interject one little
things.
thing? Can I interject one little thing before I forget? If you go back, now this is really interesting. Two things. Number one, the picture that is on the strip, the 35 millimeter strip, and we found that there were more pictures on there when I went back after the mass sighting to look at the strip 2 months before the mass sighting.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the 95 sighting, excuse me, going back to the 95 sighting. I don't know how you describe it. The slide next to the last one, where I call one was half disappeared and one was still there. The only thing in that picture are the two unknowns. There are no street lights, car lights, nothing. And we analyzed that so much that it started to bubble. I had to just put it away. That's number one. Number two, if you go back to the pictures, and it speaks for itself on the photo page, and you take a look, and this is another part of the story. If you take a look at the 95 pictures, because I discovered I had the first one that I took with the two lower orbs, and then the last one with one half disappeared and one still there. I don't remember anything else. What I shared with you is what I remember.
Yep.
When they were analyzed a year after the mass sighting by Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, not only, and it's a visual, but if you look at those pictures, number one, he noticed that the same exact phenomena, just look at the picture, in the same exact location, is there in the distance, in a line.
Yep.
There's 4 of them in the first picture. There's 2 of them in the last picture. They're disappearing while the closed orbs are disappearing. Now, remember I told you that some people saw these orbs detached from the main object, went out into the environment, and then redocked with it? I don't know if that's what happened, but they're there in 95, in the same spot. Okay? He was the first to notice that. Do you see that? Are you looking at it? Yes?
Yep,
Okay.
I am.
Number one.
I'm going to put
Okay.
it on my screen.
Okay. Number one. Number two, he said to me, because we had another sighting that was pretty spectacular a year after the mass sighting. We have part of that video in our documentary. Through the fog, they came back. And by the third night, there were straight lines and mirror images. And the final thing is a giant pyramid, okay, in the same spot, by the way. And at that point, I had already seen them for 2 days before, and I alerted the investigators to tell the videographers, again, a little coincidence, they were north, south, east, and west, okay, to be on the ready the third night. And we all got video at the same time. And I had been told about Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who was very well respected, and that I should share my pictures with him by Linda Moulton Howell. I don't know if you know that name, but she's a big name in the field. And I had met with very few people. Only a handful of people knew who I was. The head of the optical science department at University of Arizona took great interest, and he had worked on the Star Wars project with Reagan, President Reagan. and the Dean of Students at the Brooks Institute of Photography and others, and Dr. Bruce McAfee, Navy optical physicist. And he comes back to me and he says, a couple weeks later, after I sent him the video of the 4 people from this new sighting in 98, and as an afterthought, I put the first and the last picture in the envelope. And I said, could you tell me what those close orbs are, right? So he proceeds to tell me that the same phenomena is in the background. And he also, if you look at it, these orbs moved because those skylights are there, right? In the first picture, they're on the left side of the skylights. On the last picture, they're on the right side of those skylights, right? Okay, this is in the negative. Can't be fudged, can't be manipulated. They're there. But he says to me, you told me that close sighting was 2-3 minutes. I said, right. He said, are you sure? I said, that's what I remember. He said, cooperate with your husband. I said, he won't talk about it. He said, well, you have to, cooperate with him and just verify that it was 2-3 minutes. So I finally sat my husband down. And mind you, this is 3 years later. But I said, do you remember how long that close sighting was in 95? He said, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. And I go back to Dr. McAfee and tell him that. And he said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He said, look at the pictures. Again, the data itself. He said, in the first picture, there are many lights on in the skyline, not just individual lights, but groups of lights that are off in the last picture. They're on in the first picture. They're off in the last picture. He said, that doesn't happen in a couple of minutes. He said, I want you to do an experiment. And by the way, I didn't share this for a long time because I couldn't wrap my head around it. But he said, I want you to do an experiment. Go out on the balcony and shoot the skyline. And mind you, it's 3 years later. But shoot the skyline one night every hour, the next night every half hour. I actually did it another night every 15 minutes. And see when those groups of lights go out. He was very meticulous. And his 21-page report is on the Phoenix Lights Network website. But he says to me, he said, because I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're at home. So let's be conservative and say the starting point is 8 o'clock. The groups of lights started going out at 9 o'clock. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he did it again a few years later for the National Geographic show with better software. And there were more lights that were on in the first picture that were off in the last picture. And he said to me, can I present this case at the upcoming 1999 MUFON International Symposium in Washington, D.C.? And I said, Dr. McAfee, I would have never, ever noticed this data. This is your baby. Just keep my name out of it. And like I said, only a handful of people knew who these pictures came from. And I didn't even let them out there. My video was out there but from day one. And I can tell you that story if we have time. But I did not want anything out there until I did my homework. And I said, please just keep me anonymous. And he did. But he presented the case in 1999 as the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. That there were hours between the first and the last picture, not just minutes, as we remember. And again, his 21-page report is on the Phoenix Lights Network website if anyone cares to look at it. And I did not share it in the first book because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And by the second book in 2010, I was kind of established because I wanted to, it was very precarious to come forward. I mean, I did a lot of soul searching and went back to work to put our younger son through medical school at the Arizona Heart Institute Wellness. I was the director of the Wellness and Imaging Center, the heart test. And behind closed doors, I was paring down that book, not knowing what I wanted to do with it. And interestingly, when I finally did come forward, I didn't know what the reaction would be, especially the doctors and nurses there. I had more doctors and nurses pull me aside and thank me for being someone of credence to come forward and finally talk about this, right? It's time we get this out in the open and address it and accept it and study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution. There is so much more to this story. I want to take your question, but I would love to get into how it affected the witness if we have time.
Sure. We have time. It's if you have time, you absolutely we can continue. It's not a problem at all. It's a pleasure.
And you had a
So,
question?
yeah, the question was, a lot of people say the phenomenon follows you home. It seems here that the phenomenon engaged with you in a very particular way. So I have two questions. The first one is, do you have any reference, and this is quick, of people seeing the lights also in 95 like you did, and in January of 97 before the Phoenix light, or it was almost a private, let's put it like this, because for many people these lights appear privately almost. They engage with specific people, they engage telepathically. A lot of people think that these orbs are actually beings for the way they behave. So that was the first question. The second one is, 30 years later, considering that the phenomenon follows you on, considering that opens up communication channels and maybe awakens you in ways that we don't even understand, what do you think that was? What do you think that was about? And what do you think that the phenomenon was that appeared in Phoenix across those years?
Great questions. Great questions. Firstly, I don't know what they were or who was behind it. I just know that they were, and I have the evidence to prove it and the story as well. And now I have made it a mission, actually, to not only as a scientist, gather the information and be as pragmatic and scientific as I can, as a physician, to let people know that have had experiences that, even though most can be explained, when someone has a paranormal experience, it's real to them. And if they don't share it, it festers. It's not healthy. So as a physician, I want people to know that they're not crazy. It's time we get this out in the open and let them know they're not alone. They're not alone in this. There are many, 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 many millions of people worldwide who have had these experiences, and it's real to them. And I always urge people to share it, even share it with me on the website. There's a link on top. You can go right to my email. It's very healing. It's very cathartic. And as an experiencer, I know how that feels, okay?
Yep.
To not be able to share it. And it was very cathartic for me once I did come forward and have people appreciate the work that went into it. Because let me tell you something, I really gave up my medical career to do this. And I pushed my whole medical career aside for 7 years. I stayed anonymous. And yes, I went back to work to help put our youngest son through medical school. He's a neurologist, while I pared down the book. But I did not want to come forward. Very precarious to come forward at the time, but it needed to be told. Somebody had to tell the truth, and I had such great data as well. So I finally came forward. What was your first question? I'm sorry. Let's go back to that one.
Whether or
Your
not
first
there were
question?
other witnesses.
Oh, with
Whether or
the
not there
other
were
witnesses.
other witnesses.
There were other witnesses for days before the mass sighting. In fact, one of them, Steve Blonder, called MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, to his balcony the night of March 13th during the mass sighting, because he was seeing these things and documenting them on film like I was. So there were other people that were seeing them, and they happened to catch an arrowhead of 5 lights that is spectacular. It's a great video. In fact, I'll tell you another little coincidence if you want to hear it.
Sure.
Okay. For weeks, I was running out there. We would be in our bedroom, and like I said, one wall was a window. So whatever popped up out there, it would catch your eye if it was unusual. And I would see these lights keep popping up near the Estrella Mountains, right? And where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I would run out there and I felt obliged or something as a scientist to document it. Okay. And my husband was getting a little annoyed with me. So I said, okay, fine. I will show these to my friends and see if anybody knows anyone in the field. I didn't know who to show my pictures to. So this is how close I was, guys. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. So I called him up and I said, I'm seeing these lights almost every night. And he had not heard about it. But again, there were other people that were seeing them along with me. And I said, plus I have a picture. And at the time, the only picture I had was the last one from 95. But I'd like someone of credence to take a look at it and tell me what it is. He refers me, to a field investigator from MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. It's a big organization worldwide. Do you have it there? Do you have Mutual UFO
No.
Network
Well,
there?
we have
Okay, it's a
similar
worldwide.
organization. We have similar
Okay, but you've
organization.
heard of it. You've heard of it, right?
Absolutely.
We know it, yes.
Okay. So I had not heard of it. That was the first I heard of it. So he refers me to a field investigator for the following Wednesday, who calls me up on Tuesday to say the then state director wanted to be there at the meeting, but his mom had passed on Saturday. And so they had to postpone because the funeral was that Wednesday. I said, geez, I am really busy. I had 2 growing boys that, I dedicated my time to. I had, a business, etc. I had a practice. I said, the only window of opportunity I have for another 2-3 weeks is Friday morning. He said, fine, how's 10 o'clock? I said, fine. I knock on his door. He opens the door. The first thing he says to me is, did you see the man sighting last night? And I said, well, I saw something very similar to what I told you I saw 2 months ago. In fact, I called the air traffic controllers this morning and they admitted that it was the same exact phenomenon, the same exact location over Class B restricted airspace. And I took video of it last night. He said, great, because NBC was coming to interview him in a half hour. I said, whoa. I said, hey, listen, I don't know if this is a hoax or military or whatever, but it's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about the data. I said, take a copy of the video, share it with whoever. I'm out of here. And I left. Okay. Now, I didn't know where the video was going to go. I didn't know if the media was going to even talk about it. I mean, I'm just hearing for the first time that he's talking about a mass sighting of orbs and craft that people saw all over the state. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in front of our TV with a VCR. Do you remember what VCR is? Okay.
Absolutely.
And again, I didn't know if they were even going to cover it. First news, breaking news with my video on every single news station. He shared it with everybody, which was fine. I was excited. Having seen these unexplained aerial phenomena for a couple of years, I mean, having it on TV and having other people see what we saw, and it was anonymous. I mean, even one of them said a Paradise Valley woman took this video. Okay. Which was fine. I didn't care. It was great that people were seeing it. And by the 9 o'clock news, there were a couple other videos that came out, the Arrowhead and 2 boomerang videos. Now, my video and the Arrowhead of 5 lights was shot before 10 o'clock. The 2 boomerang videos, one of which is a little haphazard. I have never used that in anything because that might have been flares. But one of them, if you've ever seen it, the boomerang is rock solid. I mean, that's been tested. That is rock solid. Those lights are attached to something or have a force field in between. There's a whole story to that. the boomerang, that boomerang after 10 o'clock is when the military said that they sent off flares. And that has been, forevermore, the debate whether that video
Right.
itself is flares or not. But be that as it may, I mean, here, now I'm finding out that thousands of people saw what I saw. What do you do with that? So
Yeah,
at that
absolutely.
point, I started to keep a daily journal. And so there were people before the mass sighting that were seeing them as I was.
Understood. Sabrina,
No, please keep on, Antonio.
I mean, you wanted to tell the story about the effects on the witnesses, and I'd love to also know about the effect on you after all these years. I mean, it's quite common that to an experience like this, uh, people that have this kind of experiences also have either mystical experiences, spiritual experiences. They actually open up spiritually. Sometimes they completely lose the fear of death. And also, there is another incredible connection or incredible coincidence, let's say, but I agree with you, coincidence probably don't exist. That a lot of people that had near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences are way more likely to encounter this phenomenon, to witness this kind of phenomenon, than people that don't. And you had a near-death experience when you were 8 years old. So now again, fast forward 30 years. What is your perspective of reality today?
Okay,
If you need to
great
connect the
question.
two aspects.
Okay. What was really interesting as I was collecting data, you bring up a really excellent point, because half my book is about the Phoenix Lights and how the story unfolded. And again, there's a lot more to the story than we talked about here. Half my book is about how the Phoenix Lights affected the witness in real time and long term. But what really sucked me into that was the fact that there were a number of witnesses that had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that really hit me hard, as you mentioned, because I did too. And I thought, whoa, again, it's not about me, it's about the data. I thought, geez, could there possibly be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena that have a mystical light associated with the experience? And lo and behold, when I started looking, just like the UFO, I had no idea. I mean, I really looked for credible data from, again, at Harvard University, Dr. John Mack, the Omega Project from University of Connecticut, Dr. Kenneth Ring, and Dr. Bruce Grayson, and on and on. People were studying the effect, the fact that all unexplained phenomena had a connection. Not only, and I lay out very simply in the book, not only in the experience itself, which when you really look at it, is very similar, whether it's near-death experience, out-of-body experience, or unexplained aerial phenomena, but was most profound and poignant was the after effect, the awakening, the enlightenment, the connectiveness that one feels after having what I started calling an up experience, UP, an up unexplained phenomena, UP, because it
Yep.
was a positive transformation, a connectiveness to the universe, to the earth, to each other that they may never have felt before. And the more I talked to people and the more I studied the data, the more I was finding that this was in fact true. And I really tried to make a study of it, a small study of my own, just talking to people and just doing the research. And 4 years ago, I decided that, you know what, as much as the data speaks for itself, And there's so much more to the story. I mean, I had automatic writing. I don't have the book in front of me, but I can get it if you want to read that, because that sent me on this journey, and also a picture that's now in the latest edition that, really did it for me, which we can get to. But going back to the connection between all unexplained phenomena, I felt, you know what, it's really important to document this scientifically and do a questionnaire, which is on our website. If you go to the Phoenix Sites Network website, and there's a triangle, and underneath the triangle, you can enter. Under that is the questionnaire survey. Totally anonymous, totally confidential. I wish I knew who some of these people were, because they wrote things there that are just phenomenal. But I work with a PhD psychologist, professor, Dr. Russ Scalpone, and he worked on the FREEZE study, if anybody out there has heard of that. Very big study of like 5,000 people worldwide that they were doing a study on ghosts and Bigfoot and all that. This study is really unique and groundbreaking, because nobody has ever done a study of the effects on the experiencer in real time and long term of a mass sighting, especially at an established, credible mass sighting worldwide. And this is a worldwide phenomenon, which was kind of mind-boggling to me. I mean, I put it out there that, if anyone had had a similar phenomena experience, please join us. And from all over the world. I mean, we have over 1,000 people worldwide that participated in this study, and the findings are mind-boggling.
What are the findings?
I mean, oh my gosh. Well, I can tell you now, because we were just published. You want to do peer review. I mean, I really tried to be very scientific with this, and I wanted peer review. And the Society for Scientific Exploration, which is a very professional scientific organization, had us present the case last year. And they were so impressed that they asked us to write an abstract, an article in their journal, which just came out a couple weeks ago. So I can talk about it. It's now published. That first of all, which really I was surprised in some way, that at least a third, if not more, of people that participated in this study not only thanked us profusely, because it was, again, very cathartic for many people to just share their experience with one person, with a questionnaire. I mean, it really helped people to do that. But about a third or more could not even discuss their experience with their family. That's awful. I have to tell you. I mean, that has to change. I mean, that, like I said, most anomalies can be explained, but there is a small percentage that cannot. And just because somebody might have that experience of that small percentage, you can't blow it off and make that person feel like they're crazy or that it doesn't exist, because to them it does. And it's very real. Okay. These things are very real. And then on the other side, I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but on the other side, what I also discovered is that about a third of people were taken aboard a craft. Were actually taken aboard a craft knowingly, not under hypnosis, not under sleep paralysis, not, but knowingly, and want to continue. They want to do it again. They keep looking to do it again. There's some kind of connection that happens. Plus, about a third or more, almost a half, feel not only a connection to the phenomena, whatever that phenomena is, but these orbs, many of them have telepathic connection with these orbs, just as the native cultures do. In fact, the day before our mass sighting, there was a pretty mass sighting in one of the towns, Loop, L-E-U-P-P, Arizona, over the Navajo range, and they see lots of stuff up there. And they're so used to it and welcome them. They welcome these phenomena. They welcome these beings. and these lights were going around in circles and clockwise and then counterclockwise. The whole town brought out their lawn chairs to watch it for over an hour. I mean, that's how open they are to these phenomena. And that's what it's going to take. Opening up your mind and your heart. And you mentioned that. It changes your consciousness and opens up your consciousness when you have an experience. You don't have to have an up experience, an unexplained phenomena experience, to have that positive transformation. All you need to do is open your mind and your heart and learn about it. And you're going to start seeing serendipities, little coincidences. I call them an anonymous gift from beyond. Okay. But it's true. I mean, your life is forever changed. And our study is showing that. Not only is the positive, I mean, it's a positive transformation. 99% of people, unless they're in their little reality cube of religion or whatever, which was like 1% of people, just can't break out of that, or they don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But the happiness quotient is off the charts. I mean, who's ever doing this, to answer your question, not only wants to wake us up to their presence in a very gentle, non-threatening way, but they also want to wake us up to our positive potential we have as human beings. It's very spiritual. It ascends all religions. It connects all religions, and that the person feels spiritual. I hear it over and over and over again, that for the first time, they have empathy. They feel a connection to the earth and to each other that they never, and animals and plants and to the world that we live in. For who's ever doing this is waking us up to that. So, I leave you with that. I mean, I have to say that, number one, the study itself, and I'm now writing a book. Please be on the lookout for that, because I'm combining the study, which again is groundbreaking, with actual stories. I've been asked for years to do this. Actual stories of the firsthand witnesses themselves and their stories. Oh my goodness, I've been doing Zooms myself for the past few weeks. I joined forces actually with Britt Elders. She was very involved with the Meyer case in Switzerland, and she also is an icon in the field. She's been doing this, researching UFOs and UAP and all that for decades. And when she found out that I had this study, and I'm also sitting on all these reports from people, and I take confidentiality very seriously. People can, if they want to share with me, they can do it anonymously. That's up to them. But most people don't. Most people say, I don't care anymore. I want my story out there. It's amazing. And their stories are so profound and so poignant. I mean, not only did they feel, and I'm getting vibrations right now, not only did they feel like a light come over them. I mean, when they describe what happened to them when these crafts were right above them, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's just incredible that in real time, these Phoenix lights phenomena touched the individual in a very deep, profound, positive way. And many of them, their lives changed forever.
Yeah.
I mean, they just became more open to so many things that they never even thought about before. And some people went into the peace movement. Some people went into the environmental movement. Some people changed their eating habits and wouldn't eat meat anymore. I mean, there were definite changes that some of them didn't even realize until they started doing the study. And when we talk about it, it's just, I mean, hearing the stories themselves, people get so, like myself. I mean, I admit it, I'm very passionate about this because there's something that's changing us for the positive and touching us and letting us know that we are not alone in the universe, whether it's interstellar, interdimensional, which for me, a lot of what I've experienced is interdimensional. So there's other times and spaces, and that's why I finally came forward in the second edition of the book. It's now in its third edition. to share the missing time data, because if that opens the door a little bit for scientists to actually study the fact that our concept of time, past, present, and future, is very linear. It's primitive. Okay.
Yeah.
Time may not be that at all. It might be spherical. I mean, there's so many rumors out there you know, I mean, people talk about all different things with time, but the fact is that if there's other, as the quantum physics and quantum mechanics are talking about 10 or 11 different dimensions out there, at least, if that's the case, and there are other times and places along with ours, then why would it be such a leap to think that there could be sentient, intelligent entities in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? So I invite people
Yeah.
to open their minds and their hearts if they choose. If they choose, I give 10 different ways to communicate. And you asked me that question as well. When I had my near-death experience, and I am just starting to talk about this because, you know, I mean, at this point, it is what it is. And again, I have tried my best as a scientist, as a physician, as an experiencer, and certainly as an educator of vital health issues to share this vital issue in the most credible, professional way that I can. But it's part of the story, and people that read the book will understand. And you've read the book, obviously, which I appreciate, because my near-death experience, people have asked me if that was connected to the 3 orbs outside our bedroom window on the eve of my birthday. And I'll explain. When I was 8 years old, I was in a dentist's office, and this was 1956. I'm giving away my age, but there it is. And I had major teeth work done. And actually one of our sons did too. So it was probably hereditary, whatever, but they were using ether at the time, which is very dangerous for a child as an anesthetic. And I remember the mask being put on my face. And the next thing I remember, do you want to hear this? Do you want me to describe
Absolutely.
this? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going around and around like a glass door, you know, the revolving glass doors, around and around and around. A strange musical song kept going. And other people have shared with me that they had a similar experience to this. And suddenly it came to a barrier and the door would not go any further. And I knew at that moment that if I went further, and mind you, I was a very naive child. All I knew was singing and dancing. Okay. Practicing singing and dancing. And I was on a television show every Sunday. So I was practicing for that show every week. We weren't religious at all in our home. So it was nothing I would have picked up. But I came to this barrier and I knew if I went past that barrier, I would be dead. And I was in a panic because at the same time, I had a short life review. I was only 8 years old, so it was pretty short. But my mom, who doted on my brother and myself, she dedicated her life to us. And I knew if I died, she would be devastated. And I kept thinking, I can't die. I can't die. For her, I can't die. The next thing I remember, after being in a panic state, I was up above the clouds, just floating very peacefully among the clouds. And suddenly I noticed above me were 3 giant beings in a row. Now they might have been 10 feet tall, but to me they were giant, with glowing white robes, with hoods over their heads. And I actually tried to see their faces, but I couldn't see their faces because their hoods were over their face. And I have to tell you that after my near-death experience, up until the Phoenix Lights experience, I always felt that they were spirit world. Now I don't know what they were. Okay, let that be said. But be that as it may, I was very peaceful, very calm. In fact, I felt their unconditional love for me. It was so strong. They knew who I was inside. They just knew. And it seemed like they were looking down, and I turned my head, and it was like I had a telescope. Now, as I'm talking to you right now, it's real as I'm talking to you. Okay, this memory. Telescope looking down on Earth, and I could see what people were doing. And I was watching children etch out hopscotch with chalk on the sidewalk. And then I saw a milk truck, a milkman coming out of a truck. And in 56, they'd used to deliver milk at the door. And he was coming to the door and he delivered the milk and he went back in his truck. And then I was watching a man open his store and putting out the sign for the day that it was open. But I knew what was going to come next. And I thought, how could I know what was going to come next? Well, wait a minute. Does that mean that whatever comes before us, we don't have control over? That it's already destined? And mind you, I was very naive. I mean, this is very profound. It's a very naive kid. But I thought, now, wait a minute. We may not have control over what comes before us, but we do have control over what we do with that situation. Whether we take advantage of that opportunity that comes before us or blow it off. Or if we're kind to a person we meet or an animal, or we're nasty and it's like a pebble in a pond. And I could even picture that, like the ripples of what we do. It will affect other people. Okay? I mean, this is what I'm seeing while I'm like realizing that we have free will to do whatever we choose to do as a human being. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute. If these beings are looking down on us and watching, and I don't know if they're connected with the watchers in biblical times and so forth, supposedly watchers were these men in robes, and I knew nothing about this at the time, obviously, not until just a few years ago, but would go around the world teaching knowledge to people. So I don't know if they're connected to them, but I thought, wait a minute. If these beings are looking down and watching us, giving us a stimulus and watching what our reaction is, aren't human beings, but an experiment. And with that thought, I hear a magnanimous male voice say, it's not your time. It's not your time. There's a reason you have to go back. And the next thing I know, I'm in the dentist chair. My legs are up, which they do when they want blood to go to your brain. And the dentist and the assistant were asking me, are you okay? Are you okay? Never said a word that anything went wrong. Never told my parents. And I never said a word to anyone else. But it was so real to me that for weeks, months, I would go to a park that was near our house and look up every day to see if I could see these three beings again, which I never did. But I felt that they have been with me ever since as my guides. And whenever I come to a crossroads, and there have been many, where I have questioned things or I have a decision to make, I don't hear voices, and I recommend this in the book too, but I meditate and send out almost like a prayer to ask for guidance, and I get answers. There's something out there, and I have felt that these three beings have been with me ever since childhood. And if you want, I can give you some examples that are pretty profound, because when I was actually touring in Sound of Music, I was invited to audition for a major role it was a Broadway show that was written by the author of the book Exodus. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And the movie was with Paul Newman. It was very famous. And now they were doing the musical, and I was invited to audition for the role of the ingenue. And by the way, when I came back By the time I was 10, 11 years old, I had this beautiful coloratura voice, like 3-octave coloratura voice, that I thought that's why I came back. That's really for years. I thought that's why I came back, to give people pleasure by singing, and actually started lessons with the head of the music department, Professor Robert Page at Temple University. They wouldn't let me start until I was 13, but I studied with him all through for years. Okay. That's why I thought I came back. But at any rate, while I was touring, and I was like 20 years old by then, and auditioned for this role. They flew me into New York. I auditioned for this role. It was really fun. There were lots of other girls there that, I figured, really, I mean, what chance did I have to get this? And I was starting medical school in a month. And I didn't even mention it to him because I figured, yeah, what are the chances I'm going to get that far, right? Well, it got down to 2 of us, myself and the other girl I went to elementary school with in Philadelphia. And in 4th grade, Jacqueline Mayrow, unbelievable ballerina, unbelievable. She was plucked out to play the role of Baby June in the original Gypsy musical with Ethel Merman. And it got down to the 2 of us. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I mean, it's like, talk about a crossroads. In the day, and this was 1970, there were only a handful of girls in a class of 120 when I went to medical school. Okay, it was very rare for women to go to medical school then and to be accepted. And I had been accepted in like a handful of schools that I already rejected. But here was a role in a musical that the book was a massive success, bestseller. The movie was a massive success. And now they were doing the musical. What to do? And I meditated, and the answer I got was that I had to go to medical school. It was just a feeling that I had to go to medical school, and one day I would know why. I called Leon Uris, who wrote the book, Exodus, and I told him I was starting medical school in a month, and he was very angry with me that I hadn't told him. So I don't know if he had told her or whatever, but she got the role. They always test out musicals in cities like Boston and Philadelphia before they go to Broadway, which they did. They opened on Broadway. It closed in 3 weeks. I would have been mud. There's no school that would have ever accepted me if they knew that I, did Broadway and didn't get. So that's just one of many, many times, including, if you read the book, and you probably remember, that I didn't know what to do. I mean, I kept asking my friends, I don't want to do this. This is like too controversial. I know nothing about this, but I have this data. What should I do? And one of my best friends said, Lynne, you've been doing this for years with, getting together, videos and being on TV. If anybody can do something professional and credible, you can. But come on, it was a giant step to come forward and to really commit to do this. And I went out on the balcony and I just looked up at the sky and I said, okay, if I'm really supposed to do something credible and professional with this, take up my time and my expertise and my monies, I am willing to do that. I will surrender to whatever needs to be done. Just show me the way. And I have to tell you guys, the puzzle pieces keep fitting together and have brought me here today. So here we are.
Well,
Don't know
thank
where
you
it's
very
going to
much,
lead.
Lynne.
We'll see where it's going to
Beautiful
lead.
story.
But if it helps people, that's all I wanted to do, was help people and get the information out there in a way that can help people learn and grow and get us to the next level. I mean, this is real. This is real. And
Yeah.
the sooner
And
people
things seems
realize
to
that
be
and keep
accelerating, right?
I'm sorry. Say again.
And things seems to be accelerating. A lot of
Oh,
things seems to be
absolutely.
happening. So it's
Well, they
incredible.
can't hide it
Yeah.
anymore. They can't hide it anymore. Everybody has cell phones. Everybody's seeing stuff. You know, whistleblowers are coming out. We're having congressional hearings, which is wonderful. I mean, there's so much that's coming out now. Now, I don't know how much is true, how much is misinformation, disinformation. That's in the mix, of course. But the one thing about the Phoenix Lights that I can tell you, as I said before, they are touching one person at a time. And it deeply that, and I can't wait till the book comes out so I can really show people not only the study itself, which is very detailed and scientific, which is fine, and the findings are amazing, but to hear it from the person themselves is so moving and so reassuring that I think it'll be one more way that people can learn and grow. And hopefully it'll assure people that have had the experience that's real to them, that they're not alone, and they might be able to relate to someone in the book. And also to people that have not opened up to it yet, because they're the ones that are really going to be left behind and frightened because we're so inundated with threat, and harm. Dr. Gary Schwartz, the head of the Consciousness Study Department at the University of Arizona, made a very poignant statement in our documentary. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if you're prompted to fear something, which our movies and our media have done for years, okay, how do you think you're going to react when you see that something? Okay, so the movie Independence Day was huge at the time of the mass sighting in 97. And children who saw this giant V coming towards them were jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it came closer, a calmness came over everyone, a connectiveness to the phenomena that once it passed, they wanted to run after it or have their parents get in a car and chase it. So in real time, there was that positive transformation. So, I'm just saying, look at the data, and I hope people will. The book is The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery that we are not alone, and it's in its third print. I always recommend the ebook only because there's color pictures and live links. And there's one picture in there that I finally shared in the last edition that I did not share in the others because the original publisher, Hampton Roads, thought it would confuse the public. But for me, it really confirmed the whole thing. Have you seen it? Have you seen the picture?
Your mom.
Okay. The kitten picture. That did it for me. Do you want me to tell it, or do you want me to let people see it for themselves?
Sure.
Okay. Our younger son,
Let's
who's a
close
neurologist.
Let's close with the story, which is a great story.
Okay. Because this did it for me. I mean, I was so apprehensive about coming forward until this picture. It really brought everything together. Our younger son, who is a neurologist, was the only one who read my 750-page journal. It was a mishmash of everything, and he happened to be home for a month. And I said, please, I handed it to him. I said, I really respect your opinion. I don't want to come forward, but there's some really amazing, the history of these phenomena since human documentation began, and Foo Fighters during World War II, similar phenomena, and on and on. I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. He was the only one that read it. And he looked at me. He said, Mom, you have to do this. This is too important not to share. And everything you've done has led up to this, from the mouth of babes, right? Okay. Our other son, on the other hand, is an attorney. And he's the biggest skeptic of all, and said, Mom, you better not come forward. They're going to find out it's military and you'll look like an idiot. Until this happened. He wanted to get a Siamese kitten for his then fiance for Valentine's Day, and they're married now, 20 some years. And he was at UCLA Law at the time, and he couldn't find an ad. And he said, Mom, if you find one on a Wednesday, I'll fly in on Friday. We'll go Saturday morning. I'll fly back on Sunday. Good excuse to see you. Okay. Weeks passed. Valentine's Day passed. Now, one thing I didn't share, on March the 7th, right before the 3rd anniversary, and this is very important, Beta. At that time, the former Councilwoman, Vice Mayor of Phoenix Barwood, was running for Secretary of State, and she was asking for a reenactment, which was brilliant. Hey, show me. If it was you, hey, I'm open. I'm a healthy skeptic. I'm a show me person. Shame on you for going over people's heads and not, and denying it. But show me. And right before the 3rd anniversary, on March 7th, we get an announcement that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town to show everyone the Phoenix lights. Okay. I think it was Michigan, New York, and California, if I'm not mistaken. Be that as it may, we were ready, with cameras ready. And if you go on the news page on the Phoenix Lights Network website and you scroll down about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a box that says AZ Family. They took video of their attempted reenactment of the Phoenix Lights and talk about a joke. They tried to make a triangle. It was upside down. It fell apart immediately. It had huge smoke trails, just what flares do. So that really convinced me more than anything. They had their shot. And this really put the nail in the coffin for the flare thing. I mean, they announced it big time on TV, on the radio. It was a joke. But I needed that one more push. And a couple of weeks later, I see an ad in the paper. And the lady says she's only going to be there Saturday morning. She had 3 kittens. He flies in. Saturday morning, we go. One of the 3 kittens runs right up to him, which was very endearing. As skeptical as he was, it happened to be the 10th anniversary of my mom's passing. Now, there is history to this. He was the first grandchild. She had a very, very close relationship with him. So it was very endearing that his first pet he happened to get on the 10th anniversary of her passing. So we kind of kidded, Mom's with you, blah, blah, blah. He goes to California. He goes back, calls me up. He says, Mom, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's the matter? He said, I got this iZone camera. It's this very small Polaroid camera at the airport to take pictures of the kitty when I got back to the apartment. And he was alone in the apartment. He said you have to pull out a strip before you can take the next picture, so it cannot be double exposed. And he laid out all the strips. He says, Mom, in one of the strips, in the middle of the roll, actually strip 5, was an arm with a hand in front of the kitten's face, and you can see through the hand, and it's Mom's hand. Now, she had crippling juvenile arthritis. She went through nursing school in a wheelchair, became head nurse of the premature nursery, the NICU at Albert Einstein Hospital in Philadelphia. She could move mountains. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for my mom. But I was skeptical. I said, Brett, you got your hand in the picture. He said, Mom, it's a right hand. And I was taking it with my right hand, and it looks like Mom's hand. She had a very distinctive arthritic hand. I said, you know what? You're graduating in May. I'll get it then. I forgot about it. We go for the graduation. He says, hey, Mom, remember I told you about that strip? I said, yeah. He brings it out. I almost fell off my chair. And anybody that sees it also, the hair goes up on their arms. Not only, and I've had this analyzed by university and military and even a filmmaker because it's in one of his films. Not only did he notice that because he said to me when he did it for this movie, Life After Life, did your mom wear glasses? I said, yeah, she wore them around her neck all the time. He noticed that there was glasses in there, but there's also an arm in front of the kitten. And when he analyzed it, there's an arm cupping the kitten from behind. And you can see through the arm to Brett's JanSport backpack logo underneath. But I was still skeptical. I said, you know what? Let me find a picture of my mom and see if it's her hand. I go through boxes that my dad left when he passed of just pictures. And I found a picture, and that's in the book too, of my mom when she was in her 30s or 40s holding a preemie baby almost the same way as in this picture that was taken 10 years after she passed. That did it for me. It doesn't matter what anybody else said. She would have found a way not only to let him know that she's with him, but also to say to me, get off your butt and do this. This is real. And that
Yeah.
picture did it for me. And after then, it was like, okay, there's a sign. Okay, I'm done with this. And that's when I started really taking this seriously to come forward. And here I am today.
Thank you. Thank you for this story. It's beautiful. Thank you very much, Lynne.
Thank you.
Oh, my
I really
pleasure. I
appreciate it.
really appreciate it. And, you know, if I don't have the book in front of me, unfortunately, but there was automatic
We will
writing 1
love.
month after. I mean, there's so much to this story. I hope that people will
I know.
pick up the book. Yes, yes.
And I will add
And
all the links in the description below. Thank you very much.
oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much
Yes.
for having me and letting me share. And I do hope that people will take it to heart and know that we're not alone in this universe, whether it's from out there or just around us, and to keep looking up. That's a
Thank you
double
very much.
Thank you
entendre
very
now.
much.
You know, it's a double entendre, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you, Lynne. Have a nice day for you and night for us.
Thank you so much for watching. Something is Up is still at the very beginning, so every bit of support makes a huge difference in my ability to bring you more amazing stories and incredible guests. If you enjoy this conversation and feel called to support the channel, I'd be super grateful if you could just click the like and subscribe buttons and share the video with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.